started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Tanev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it was just, it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, no, I'm Chris, you can actually go now.
No, hold on.
Oh, we had to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still had, hold on. All right. Chris go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. Yeah, he's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
Saying, oh yeah, I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can follow us, of course, on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com. We're live on Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks. We are live, Twitch.com. We are live as well on Shifts and Pucks, and of course, you can subscribe to wherever you get your audio podcasting, as well as it is, as we are all back from the All-Star break. We've got 2 interesting games. With Ottawa and New Jersey and Carolina and Toronto, as Freddie Anderson returns to the Scotiabank Center. Yes, that arena. And I think
Maple Leaf Gardens. Oh wait, no, sorry.
No.
Yeah.
It's all those names, but we're live. We've got lots to get into. I apologize, first of all, to Dylan, who I'm the reason we're late. Was just waiting for something, but I'm here. We're here. We've got We'll get into this. We'll say hello to Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a busy couple of days, but good. Are you posting articles, etc., all that sort of stuff? Devin. Hello.
Hey, Kev, what is that etc. that you talk about?
So yesterday I did the play-by-play for the Greater Vancouver Canadians, and can I do a shameless plug now?
Go for it, Kev.
In my intro, there's nothing better. Please.
Yeah.
Let's make this about you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Devin, we have spent a good 4 to 5 seconds talking about you, and I feel that that's long enough. Okay. Can we get back to me, please?
Of course, please. My apologies.
I was on with Dan Stevenson as Matt DeBorg is on the injured list with an upper body injury. So I filled in. They called me up to be on the fireside chat yesterday. So that should be actually out tonight, where we had a lengthy debate about Jacob Pelche. That's what I'll tease. But we're gaining momentum on the hashtag play Pelche. That's what I'll say. Plus, of course, did a recap of the Rockets 2-1 weekend in the U.S. But what were you up to? Okay, we should get back to you here. We still have a good 9 seconds.
Beautiful. I'll make it quick. Maybe Matt's on the IR for him to not make stupid takes.
Oh, are you calling him out?
I'm calling him out. Really am.
It's not me this time? Oh, wow.
Listen, Matt, I love you. But no. So, yeah, everybody does need to go check out the Fireside podcast after, obviously, listen to us on Mondays talking Canucks and Wednesday talking Flames. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that is right.
We're all cohesive here. We're not playing against anybody.
No. What do you got there, Devin? But those are view. Like what's going on there?
Oh, this right here.
Yeah. What's that?
Brand new mic.
Nice.
Fancy.
Lovely, isn't it?
Wow. Yes, you sound professional.
Yeah, I was hoping to sound more professional because obviously some of my takes are not with the shits and fucks.
Yeah, well, we all have unprofessional takes, right, Sean?
Oh, I have many unprofessional takes. It's the professional ones that are the surprise.
Often. What are you up to?
Oh, I was busy working a lot. And yeah, just and watching way too much Olympics, if there is such a thing.
I was about to say, is there such a thing? I'm not sure there is. Everyone binges the Olympics.
The remote control has gotten a lot of work over the past couple of days, trying to catch up, flip back and forth between all the events, and that it's just fantastic. It's like we've got Max Perrot winning a gold medal for Canada after beating cancer. Fuck cancer. Go Max Perrot. Gold medal for Canada. Let's go.
And within 3 years of having cancer, too, at that. Like, to win a gold medal as an Olympian 3 years after being diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, that's fucking impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to mention Mark McMorris, who came back from nearly dying behind in a backcountry snowboarding accident between the last Olympics and this one, and coming back and getting bronze again.
Yep. Yeah, and then we'll talk about this in a little bit, but there's a huge hockey game tonight between Canada and the U.S. that starts in about an hour and a half of this comment. So that might be the best hockey game. This might be one of the best games of the entire Olympics. I will be bold enough to say it. So anyway,
and hopefully that means this podcast is under 90 minutes long.
Well, if we get started now.
We'll end at the same time.
Yeah, probably. But we're kind of entering in sort of the second half. By the way, I did a pod clip kind of talking about all the stories that were not Flames and Canucks related, so check that out as well. But we're just focused, just kind of a recap of the Canucks, and I think the obvious story of the Canucks this year was the changing from Benny Green to Rutherford, Alvin, management group, and Boudreau. But what, other than that, are the stories of this season?
For me, it's the resurgence of Quinn Hughes. Like he was still producing points last season during that shortened season, but his defensive game wasn't there. It's there this season. He's showing that he is a true, legit number one defenseman in this league, and that is something that is huge for the Canucks.
For me, it's kind of a mixture of the impressive season that JT Miller has been having in combination with the disappointing season that Elias Pettersson has had.
Devin?
Yeah, for me, it would be Thatcher Demko. Just keep on proving what he proved, like how good of a goalie he actually is. Realistically, they definitely have something within that former prospect, former pick. He is everything and more, and he just keeps on getting better.
I just want to say thank the Flames for taking Mason McDonald in that second round instead of Thatcher Demko.
You know what? I was actually being nice on this podcast so far. I was going to throw some shade towards the Canucks. All right.
Wow, you gotta.
Well, we're just gonna have to see how well Jacob Markstrom and Tanev do in the playoffs this year. Unlike the Canucks, and they will not make the playoffs.
Oh, I had to. We've had way too many of the Tkachuk and Oljulevy comments happen. I have to take my shot when I can.
That's fair. That's fair. We don't hear enough of the Demko Mason McDonald bungle there, so that's fair. I can see what you're saying there. Yeah, I agree with all of those. I mean, just I think the play of Miller. I guess the struggles of Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes has been a good development. And Demko, it's sort of hard to really. I'm still not sure how to evaluate the Canucks overall, because they had the horrible start. They had to make the changes. We all went through that. They've been better. I just still don't know where exactly they are at. Like, I guess that's sort of what my struggle with this question is. I mean, I don't feel like, I think part of the problem is how we haven't been able to dig deep. Like, there's not, can't say that there's someone on this team that I'm like, wow, this guy has really impressed me more than I expected. Like, I mean, Miller has been impressive. And I mean, maybe it's a surprise, his offensive output, but I mean, I think that there was somewhat of an expectation of that, but there's no one like, I'm like, oh man, he's been really, really a lot better than we've given him credit for. The closest I would give that to in a weird way is Matthew Highmore, but I don't know if it's enough to move the needle, if that makes sense.
When it's a fourth line player, yeah, it's not going to move the needle. But yeah, I think you are right, Kevin. The fact that it's kind of hard to, with the season that they've had up, like going all the way as far into the season as they did without making a move, it makes it really hard. Like Oliver Ekman-Larsson's not anywhere near the offensive, not really shown much offensive prowess that he has shown in the past, but he's still been solid defensively. Niels Höglander's been up and down. Vasily Podkolzin's been up and down. I would maybe say how solid sort of AHL defenseman Luke Shen has looked for the Canucks this season. Has been a bit. I would say that if you're gonna look at someone who is outplayed enough to make an impact, it's been Luke Shen.
The irony, considering our intro clip.
Yeah.
Mr. AHL defenseman right now.
Well, I made that's why I made that comment.
Like he definitely
right
has expectations. Like he has stood in for Hamonic, like for where Hamonic was expected to be. So I would say I'm definitely impressed with what Luke Shen's brought to the table. It's just hard to gauge where the Canucks should be because I feel like we haven't really seen like what the Canucks are in their regular state because they had that super shitty start to the season. Then we had a ridiculous new coach bump. And then we had a slaughterhouse of a road trip while also being affected by COVID. So like it's really hard to actually just gauge the Canucks season on the merits of the hockey that they've played under normal, regular, and for those just listening, using air quotes there, circumstances.
And they even in that slaughterhouse of a road trip, they still managed to not be. It wasn't absolutely horrific. Either.
4 out of 10 points, I will take that. Out of those teams that we played, absolutely.
But for those who don't know which road trip you're speaking of,
it was it Florida, Tampa, Washington, Nashville,
Carolina,
and Carolina.
Yeah, not in that order, but those teams.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a better way to ask the question. What is there a game that you felt this year that this was the game that you knew that this was the real Canucks team?
Really hard to say because, like, yes, we've had some great games, we've had some good games, but like it's hard to say what is more representative of the Canucks in their, I guess, default state. It's really hard to pick one out of the calendar. Yeah,
I'll say that right now. We haven't seen that yet because we still haven't seen. I think maybe the closest would be the 4-2 win over Washington on that road trip, where you got production from Pettersson, and they're gonna miss, and we're not gonna see it for the next little bit either. With you've got with Quinn Hughes being out with COVID for the next at least 3 games, so we don't. That's the big thing is we haven't seen that yet from this team. We don't know what they actually are. And that's what makes this conversation difficult, but interesting all in the same way.
And weird considering we're now in the back half of the season.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it's going through sort of a rebuild, sort of a re-identifying, reimagining. I think that all of those words are fair. But maybe to me it was I'm drawing a I think we saw the potential maybe for the Canucks was when Bruce debuted. And those first couple of games, I thought we saw the potential of what the Canucks could be, and I think they've slipped back a little bit. I think that's going to bound to happen, but I think that's where we saw the potential. Um, I think for me, the one thing that I think the Canucks are overall lacking, the more and more I think of it, and I go back to that Flames game on Saturday night, and Sean and Chris, you were there. But I mean, even Johnny and Thatcher, Johnny Gaudreau and Thatcher Demko, they were at the All-Star game. They were stretching and warming up, and I think they were talking about the game because they were both yawning. So, but that I don't think they are missing. I mean, JT Miller does drag them into the fight, but they need more of that. And I think I'm not seeing overall. I think what the struggle here is with the Canucks, and not to compare them to the Flames, but since we cover both of them, I think that this is a fair comparison. It's a fair thing to say. I don't see the passion right now. I think that's what I'm missing with the Canucks. There's not that passion isn't there. I feel like this team is going through the motions because I think the organization is, because of where the organization is, they don't know what they're fighting for. Are we trying to get into the playoffs? Are we trying to rebuild? What's really going on? They're sort of.
I completely disagree with that, Kevin. I think the passion is there, and they've shown it ever since Bruce Boudreau took over. If you were to have this conversation before that change happened, you would be 110% right. They were going through the motions. Ever since then, for the most part, yeah, they've had some blips here and there, including that game in Calgary. But for the most part, they've shown passion. They've made sure that they're in games. Even that Florida game where they were in that game, other than the fact that Florida is just a juggernaut of a team that can score on it at will at this point.
Maybe Devin, Chris, jump in. Tell us.
I mean, I personally agree with Sean's take in the sense that, yeah, they definitely looked lifeless under Green, but as soon as they hired Bruce, he, like, with his different style of coaching, being more of a player's coach and just more relatable and trying to just talk with the guys and like encourage guys like PD and Brock to shoot more, like, it brought back this. I'm not sure if swagger is the right word, but he definitely has brought life back into that roster. So I would definitely say that we've seen some life out of them ever since Bruce came around.
I don't know if it's some players are missing passion. Where is Patterson? Where is Brock Besser? Like,
passion's not the issue with Patterson.
Well, what is it then?
It's confidence, and that's and what I'll say is that's the difference between the Flames and Canucks. They both play with passion. They're both playing with a give a shit meter that's high. The Flames are playing with a lot more confidence in the system, a lot more confidence in their skills than the top players that the Canucks are right now.
That's why I was hesitant to use the word swagger, because swagger comes with confidence.
But I guess my point is, okay, my transition is a little bit. Where's Pettersson been? Like, where's his confidence gone? He was a hell of a fucking player.
We're wondering what has happened?
What has happened? And you think under a new coach that things might change a little bit because it changes good sometimes, right? Being uncomfortable is good, but when you have such a skilled talent, not just skills, not just skill wise, but I mean, I'm more talking about his hockey sense. Like the only thing I could think of is that he's kind of lost a bit of passion for this.
I wouldn't say passion. I would say, if anything, killer instinct, maybe. Because
it's
that first season,
you can't flip a switch. You cannot flip a switch when you're in this. There's very few players who can go from play. Like, he got coached. Like, I was a Travis Green defender, but one thing he did do is he coached the confidence, and he coached the natural instinctive nature that made Petey what he was out of him. And now we're starting to see that come back. It's not passion that's lacking, it's confidence. And that confidence doesn't come back immediately with a coaching change. Doesn't come back immediately when things change. And we've seen spurts ever since Boudreau took over. We've seen spurts from Petey, and including just lately before the All-Star break. And if those spurts can start to see some consistency, that swagger is going to come back. That confidence is going to come back, and what you guys are seeing as lack of passion will come back. The issue is not passion; it's confidence.
And as far as him showing flashes of that sort of stuff, the reason why he hasn't necessarily been able to be consistent is whether it's himself going into COVID protocol, whether it's his line mates going into COVID protocol, or whether it's games being postponed due to COVID. Like, I realize a lot of that COVID being the common denominator, but it's because he hasn't had a chance to basically show consistency, because as soon as he shows these flashes, then there is some obstacle that comes in the way and kind of sets him back to square one again.
So here is something just interesting to build off where Devin is going. I'm just looking at the game logs for Pettersson in terms of ice time. Washington 18-20, Nashville 20-17, Florida 22-29, St. Louis 20-44, Edmonton 22-14, Winnipeg. This is interesting. So we have 4 straight games of 20 minutes or more here. Then Winnipeg 15-52. He got 2 points that game. Calgary 14-53. Chicago 16-22. 1 shot on goal. And then Nashville 16-22 -1. And no points in the last 3 games, which I'm not, whatever with that. But I think I don't know what I don't have the answer. You're probably right. It's confidence, but with that, but I honestly think he's trying. The talent, there's no question the talent is there. I still would put him as one of the more talented players in this league. Like, in terms of pure talent, Pettersson is still up there for me. I really believe that. I would put him in the upper echelon, in the top 10 or 20 of the most talented players in this league. I really would. It's part confidence, I think it's confidence, and it feels like this is a mental part of his game that he's not able to figure out. I mean, that Washington game, he got 4 shots on goal that he got the 2. Versus the Oilers on the 26th, he had 3 shots on goal. It's almost, it kind of, in a weird way, it's not the same, but it's sort of the same. As I'm thinking about it, it's kind of Sean Monahan, and maybe he was hurt. Maybe he's still hurt. Maybe he's still dealing with some sort of injury.
Stop it. Honestly, I'm tired. No, it's confidence. It really is. It is a mental thing, Kevin. You are absolutely right there. But stop. Like, it's really confidence with him. You can see when he gets going, he's there again in game. But as soon as, like, he's still trying, he can't seem to break out of this funk right now. And that funk, it came from being coached to be more defensively responsible when he needed to be coached to be the offensive dynamo that we know he can be. And he's just trying to get out of it. That's all it is.
I understand. Okay, let me preface what Kevin's trying to get at, because I think that's what is missing in Sean Monahan's game is confidence. All right, I think that there is a correlation there. Maybe not a lot, but there is a correlation there for sure. But okay, so within that thought process, if it's just confidence, is he doing everything around when he doesn't have the puck correct? Is my question. I don't watch enough Canucks games, but I'm asking you guys: do you see that full round game, or what has made him successful in the past? Those type of things clicking. And I know Sean said that it was it's been in little spurts here and there, but what about his game are you noticing within those spurts that he really needs to connect with?
It's making those it's having confidence with the puck to make the skilled plays that separates him when he's on his game from everyone else.
When he trusts his instincts and doesn't have to think about it, that's when he's at his best. I feel like he's so much in his own head, especially when he's struggling. He's so much in his own head, and what's the other hockey term? Gripping a stick too tight to actually succeed at his own game, because when he's at his best, he's just playing instinctually and hitting those one-timers or doing those crazy plays that you weren't expecting.
But within those spurts, what specific things? That's very general. I'm asking specific things if you guys can remember. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm curious.
It's legit making those plays. It's making the dekes, making smart passes, being confident enough to shoot the puck, even if the puck's not at the pass isn't necessarily perfect, or the shot isn't perfect. When he's on, those are the plays he's making, and he's making them like. Go look at how the confidence that Ovechkin plays with. Doesn't matter for one-timers. Doesn't matter where the puck is. He's still ripping it.
And back when he needs to let go of his own thought process as he's about to receive that pass and just shoot it like Ovi does, because I think that's probably the most telltale sign of watching PD's game where you'll see it is when we're on the power play and when he gets a pass and he just receives the pass and then is like, okay, do I have a shot? No. Okay, well, that went away. Do I have a pass? Oh, and then he's basically just sitting there with the puck for a couple of seconds and struggling, as opposed to just having that one-timer shot where it typically would go in for him in past years.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is, it's such when you look at him, he's overthinking. He needs to get back to his instinctual. Like there's nothing his passion is still there. He still has the drive and he's still trying to get better, but he's an overthinker. When he gets back, when he can start getting back to more instinctual plays where he's not overthinking and he's not overskating the puck because of that, he's shooting the puck when he can. Doesn't matter. He's not looking for that perfect shot to make, and that's what's gonna take him back to the level that we know he can be at.
You know, when Devin, you're asking this question, I'm trying to look back into things that, and I don't see. This is what I would like to see more from Pettersson. And Jeff Merrick uses the word angry, and I don't like. I know that we're seeing. I'm not angry, and Pettersson doesn't seem to fit. But hear me out when I'm saying this. When Pettersson. When I have noticed that Pettersson is at the top of the game, he is playing it at an angry level. Like it's not like Hulk smash, but he's driving the play to the net. He's in control of the game. Like he is one of those guys that when he's on the ice, the game comes to him. Like you notice him, he almost can take over the presence of the structure or the conscious of the game. And I'm not seeing that right now. Not as much. There have been spurts, but I would like to see more drive to the net. And I mean, yes, the one-timer shot, but just is one thing. He needs to get more, like, I'd like to see, he has a lot of, again, ridiculous when people think about, just think about this just for a minute. He has a bit of Crosby in him because he's so good with his stick and he's so quick with his stick that the puck doesn't necessarily need to be with him for a long time for something to happen. He doesn't need to dangle it. He moves it with pace, like the way Carolina, I think, plays at the top of their game as they move that puck. It moves. That's when Pettersson is at his level, is when he's moving, stick moving, skates moving, head moving, and that's just not happening right now.
And that's because of overthinking. It's not, and it has nothing to do with a lack of passion. It has nothing to do with that. It's all about he's overthinking because he's not confident in his game right now. And when you go back and watch a lot of players coming out of funks, and a lot of teams coming out of funks, they'll have good games here and there, and then they'll start to build confidence because of that, and then they'll go on a run. So right now, I feel like he's in that in-between side of where he was before Bruce Boudreau took over. He's starting to have moments where he looks like the quintessential Elias Pettersson, but he's still not there yet.
So unless anybody else has anything to say about this Pettersson conversation, I have one question to ask you guys after.
One more question. So maybe to dig deeper. So right now, if you were a guest on another podcast outside of the Canucks world, if Oilers YYC said, "Hey, tell us, describe Elias Pettersson right now," how would you describe him as a player?
Confused. He still hasn't quite. Again, if I'm going to do it in one word, it's confused.
Okay, let me ask this a second question to that. Is he a franchise centerman? Is he a number one centerman in the National Hockey League?
That's still up for debate. When he's at the top of his game, he can be, but does he get back there? That's the big question. And why I got so heated with that is because I was like, you're questioning his heart, you're questioning his passion, and I think that is where the issue is. It's confidence with him right now. He does not have confidence in.
That's not what I'm doing though at all.
Well, no. So let's go right back to the beginning where you said that the Canucks were lacking passion, and PD was a big part of that.
Okay, but I think that where it's not. I think where I'm coming from though is I don't know. I think maybe this is the heart of the issue. Is I don't know the identity of the Canucks right now overall. I don't know. Like if I was to go on another podcast and say, describe what's the identity of the Canucks, I have to say I'm confused. And I still don't like the way that we are discussing the Canucks right now. We don't know what the Canucks are right now. And I think that we're in a state of flux. And
that's fair, but that has nothing to do with passion.
But I don't. I'm not necessarily saying that passion and that drag of that fight necessarily has to come from Pettersson.
But every team is different. Go look back at the 2011 Canucks. That passion came from they had passion, but what separated them was their swagger, because they had confidence. They had they were like, all right, we can outscore anyone. They had that swagger. They had that confidence, and confidence makes that what you're saying is passion look bigger.
It definitely does amplify it and make it a lot more apparent and noticeable, even to an average fan that doesn't necessarily closely watch the game.
Can I try and rephrase the question? Oh, sorry, go for it, Kevin.
I just before you do that, I thank you, but before you do that, I where I'm coming from though is that kind of swagger, that kind of confidence, whatever we're trying to describe. I honestly think we're trying to say the same thing. We're just looking at it differently. Doesn't always come from a top 6 forward or a top 4 defenseman. It doesn't necessarily come from the core piece. It comes elsewhere. And some of that swagger, by the way, from the Canucks in 2011 was the Max, when you got a Max Lapierre, when you got some of those other guys, like some of the guys that you wouldn't necessarily Aaron Rome, like some of those guys brought that swagger in. That's where
I disagree. I think it comes from the top and trickles down. The Canucks had that. The whole Canucks roster had that swagger back in 2011, and for the years leading up to that, because of the Sedins, because of Kessler, because of Bieksa. It came from the top down.
You know, that's a great transition to my question here.
Thank you.
I think so. Within this whole conversation about Petey, where we're talking about the core, essentially, right? We're talking about core players not playing up to their potential, right? Is this indicative? I mean, like, okay, let's look at Pettersson. Okay, 2018-19, he comes in the league and he gets 66 points in 71 games. Next year, 19-20, 66 points. I have a hard time saying that. In 68 games. Then 2021, 26 games, 21 points, and last year, 46 games is 24 points. Now, within this next era or saga of, and I know, Sean, you kind of answered this already, but where it's more so the leadership group around this this Canucks team. If that passion isn't showing, or if that give a shit meter, whatever it is, because you can show passion, you can show that you're into it, that you're in the fabric of the game without putting up points. PD, I know that's not his game. Just as an example, that's not his game, because when he makes a difference, like Sean said multiple times already, it's when he's dancing around, when he's not thinking. Chris also mentioned that, and I'm just kind of curious. Okay, if that passion isn't there, how is JT Miller not a part? No. How is JT Miller, first of all, not a part of this this core, because that has been debated. But where's this core going, and how do you build pieces around that?
Before Sean gets fully into his retort, I will say the reason why Miller is, generally speaking, not considered part of the core is not necessarily because his give a shit meter is different from the rest of the core guys. It's more so because he is older than that core group by about 5 years. So he's leading from experience and from more successful teams that he's been on, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, and albeit prior to their Stanley Cups, but they still had that winning culture already there. So it's that experience that Miller is working from to basically emulate that in his current game. Whereas, I think I answered your question, just not eloquently.
And I think when we're talking quote unquote core, we're talking about players who have been out there as saying that the management team has basically said it are untouchable. And when they've talked about that, it's Quinn Hughes, it's Thatcher Demko, so your number one defenseman, your starting goaltender, and then Elias Pettersson, because you're looking at someone who, at his best, is
your most valuable forward,
is a top end forward in this league. The rest are still and then you throw in Beau Horvath because he's the captain of this team, and someone that I don't think there are pockets in the Canucks fan base that I don't think really understand what he brings and how good he is. But in terms of JT Miller, it comes down to, guess what? We're working in a cap system. And the Canucks are a capped out team while they're struggling to get back into the playoff race right now. And if they don't, how long are we looking at until they are in the playoff race? And how long are we looking at until they can, if this core is as good as we think they could be, building around it? And when I say core, I'll agree with what Chris said. It's more of an age thing more than a skill thing. To build around it, to build that team that can not only you need your top players to lead. And that's one of the problem with the Canucks this season with Petey not having a good season. You're not getting that. So that the trickle down effect there is part of the issue. But it's when is it? And then when can we expect them to be better? Like, can Höglander take a next step? Can Podkolzin take the next step? Can
if we hold on to Mott, can he take another gear?
Can Brock Besser become be the 25-30 goal scorer that we all know he can? He can be as well as being the solid all-round player that he's become. And it sounds like Rutherford's looking 1 to 2 years ahead. When I look at what the Canucks should do, I've sort of migrated my thought process to what do they look like next year, and what do they look like the year after?
Because you know that's what Rutherford is thinking, whereas Benning was how can we get and scrape our way into the playoffs this season? Whereas Rutherford has that more of a long-term approach.
The whole reason there's a lot of JT Miller talk out there is that there is a lot of people looking at it going, well, let's look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning did. They went out and got pieces that were signed for not only this season, that season, but the season after. They got 2 playoff runs out of Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. And those were depth pieces.
That they both had to give up first-round picks for it.
And what would you give up for a top-line player that you can get potentially 2 playoff runs out of if you're a contending team?
Absolutely. My whole point with that conversation, the reason why I started that, is because I don't think the Canucks should be even thinking about getting rid of a JT Miller. And it's not obviously Rutherford's want, but it's going to listen to it. But hey, what trajectory is this team on? Sean, you said it. Like, what is it? What do they look like within the next 2 to 3 years, and even next year, right? So my whole thought process there. Look, the team just north of where Chris, Sean, and I live, Edmonton. They didn't have enough good leaders. You talk about a guy who has fiery passion, the guy who I would love to bring in to the Calgary Flames, a JT Miller. Like, those guys don't grow on trees. Like, realistically, Jim Benning got a fucking steal the deal just from picking up JT Miller. Unbelievable. Those guys do not grow on trees. He has talent. He has grit. He has skill. And so when I look forward to the Canucks, they need to have a JT Miller on the team. Yeah, he's 5 years older, like Chris said, but fuck, man, you got to have those veteran players who can make a difference on and off the ice, and off the ice in the dressing room, right? I don't doubt that everybody loves him in the dressing room because he seems like a goddamn beauty because of how much he cares.
I'm 100% behind you there, Dev. I'm on, like, you find a way to keep him. You don't. There are people and pockets in the Canucks fan base out there. They're like, you just trade him because of what I said earlier in terms of you're gonna get a king's ransom for him, for these teams to get 2 playoff runs out of him. But I'm like, what about the Canucks? What about this team? What about, like, trying to make sure that this team's been and these players are put in a position to succeed, not only this season but next season and the season after? And yes, Miller is a free agent after next season, 22-23. But is he worth, say, just a $7 million deal for 4 years? He'll be he'll be 30 years old at the time of that when he signs that deal. Is he worth that?
Well, you can always trade him next year too. Like that's the thing. It's like, you know, it depends on, first of all, whether the biggest thing is, does he want to be here? Does he want to be a part of the solution of the Vancouver Canucks?
I don't think
if he's not,
I honestly think the issue is I think Rutherford is more so because I think in an ideal world, Rutherford wants to keep him for the exact same reasons why both of you guys just stated. But Rutherford is looking at it in the hard way in the sense of like, hey, Benning left me with no cap room whatsoever, and we're not a playoff team. I have to somehow leverage cap space while also trying to improve our overall roster, which is a damn near impossible ask. So the only way you can really leverage something like that is to entertain the idea of trading him. And yes, like I said, in an ideal world, you don't trade him because, like you said, those guys don't grow on trees. Those are the guys you win with. That being said, hopefully the pieces you get back from him could potentially develop into something like that. Or who knows, maybe Rutherford can get a guy that is JT Miller like 2 seasons from now when we are in a all-in type situation to actually push to be a contender.
And the other thing
the projected
is
cap space is $10 million for next year and $33 million for the year after. You're talking about $5 million for a guy who does as much as you can for you. And I realistically, I understand where you're coming from, but you already have $10 million next year, and you do need to fill out the rest of the year.
That's going to take up at least 7 of that.
Sorry?
Besser's taking up at least 7 of that.
There are other ways to free up cap space than trading JT Miller too.
Yes, and that's my point. Is that the intangibles that he brings on and off the ice? I'd say you have to keep him, but once again, is he happy here? Because if he's not happy here, then yeah, absolutely ship him off.
My thing is that if the time to make a decision on JT Miller would be at the draft. I don't think you trade JT Miller in season. You are we've talked about this in previous episodes. The heart and soul of that locker room got ripped out when Benning did not re-sign Chris Tanev. And they've struggled to recover ever since then. And then you're gonna rip out another heart and soul player in JT Miller mid-season after trying to rebuild it. I don't know. I get the cap implications and the age curve and everything. I get that, but what Devin is saying about the intangibles and what he brings to the locker room and everything, and you could tell, and all that, you can't replace that unless you get someone exactly like that. But who else is out there that would have that?
And I see and hear those points, but my counter argument to that is if you're Rutherford and you got brought in, and even Alvin brought in to make these hard decisions on the future of the team, and you need to somehow leverage cap space in an attempt to improve your overall team, yes, like I said, you don't want to let them go, but how else can you leverage something to your benefit at the height of when it's to your advantage, which is that Miller situation right now?
I don't think that's the height of his advantage, though. That's my argument.
Yeah,
I think the draft is when you're going to get the most for him.
I'm not even saying I'm talking hypothetically about getting rid of him, not whether it's in season or out of season.
Okay.
I wasn't arguing about that part. I was just talking about whether we're keeping him or letting him go.
If JT Miller is willing to sign a 3-year or less deal at $7 million, you sign him, and you make sure that he's happy here, because that is a steal of a deal type deal where it's still tradable. Anything, but if he's looking for long term as a 30-year-old, which I don't think you're going to get in the current climate from anyone unless they're absolutely desperate. And if they're absolutely desperate, do you really want, if you're JT Miller and you haven't won a cup, do you really want to go there?
Well, I guess for me, the only appeal of possibly, I wouldn't trade JT Miller. I would put him on the shell. I would put him on, it's sort of my untouchable mode. And I've said this before. I think I think you have a better chance of winning cups with JT Miller, even at 30 years old, which, just as a side note here, I think we need to re-examine our ageist analyzation of hockey players. I think we really need to. I think just because somebody is 30 years old doesn't mean that they're done. Mark Giordano continues to play. I mean, at a level. Claude Giroux is still playing at a pretty high level over 30. There's a lot of players that still can play at 30. So I think
I don't think it's the fact that the players aren't good at 30. It's more of the hesitancy to sign those long-term deals when the start of that contract is at 30.
Okay,
because by the time that they hit 34, 35, 36, they're dropping off.
There's also data out there that that backs that up. That outside of outliers like a Claude Giroux, like an Alex Ovechkin, the majority of players do see a significant drop off once they reach, say, 32, 33. And if they're on a long-term deal, they're still signed for 3 to 4 years after that. That's tough in a cap world.
Okay, but anyway, I still think there's still a bunch of things that JT Miller, even at 30 years old, even at 31, even at 32, can still bring to this team. The only thing that benefits the Canucks on a JT Miller trade, and this will probably anger Sean and Chris a little bit, I think someone would be willing to overpay for JT Miller. And I think that's partly what Rutherford and Alvin are hoping for.
That was the argument I was trying to bring up, was Rutherford's perspective.
But to Devin's point, and I really liked something that Dan said on the Fireside podcast, it's not about just acquiring prospects. It's acquiring prospects that fit your need and position in your system. So it's not just about, yes, this is the top prospect. And I think I've said this before. It's not about just because this guy's the top prospect in the New York Rangers organization that's why they should get him. Is he a fit in this organization? Is this fill a need in this organization? And when you're trading a JT Miller, you need to acquire a guy. Sorry, Sean, drink up. You need to make sure you get a guy like a Logan Stankoven, a Mason McTavish, someone that will drag you into a fight type of prospect.
Kevin loves the stank.
What I'm talking about here is the types of players that JT Miller is. Because do you have a lot of that in the organization? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But that's what you got to fill a need. Like you're not. I feel like what people are trying to do here is trade JT Miller for the hope that we get 4 amazing prospects and the world will be wonderful again. And the Canucks on their scientific Stanley Cup trajectory will be on their way and will live happily ever after. That's not how it works.
I realize it's based just off of words and not actions, just because she hasn't had the opportunity to prove it yet. But based off of what Emily Castonguay said in her introductory presser with the Canucks, I feel like she is going to take that in mind and is going to make sure that whoever we would get back in that is a fit for the franchise moving forward. Because that was one of the points that she made clear in her presser, was that not only do they need to feel comfortable, but they want to actually feel like they can succeed in their new spot as well.
And I didn't get a chance to talk about possibly re-signing Miller. If you could re-sign him for 5 years or less, 4 years would be ideal. But normally within those type of negotiations, you have to give an extra year. And that would probably be around 5 years. Someone actually out there, Philadelphia Flyers, might actually give him 6 years to win now, essentially, and bring that type of personality player into the dressing room and make that big of a difference. It really all comes down to what type of vision does Rutherford have for this organization? What does it look like in a year? What does it look like in 2 years, 3 years? What type of team do you want to retool with? Because we know it's not going to be a complete rebuild. It'll be a retool if they decide to trade JT Miller. And if they don't, then I personally would keep him and try and re-sign him and try and get those negotiations to talk again. But realistically, you do have a some money coming off the cap this year, a lot of money coming off the cap next year, or the year after next year. There's a lot of options for the Vancouver Canucks to thrive out of this. So it's really realistically not all doom and gloom as some, or maybe the majority of the Canucks Twitter is kind of looking at right now, because I see a lot of potential and progress, because you do have a number one goalie, you do have a number one defenseman, and you do have potentially a number one center if he can get back to his ways. Those are the key pieces to make a fantastic team, and especially as young as all three of those players are, it can be scary.
The way I look at it, and that's why I'm saying that I think that the draft is where you actually fully explore the JT Miller options, because realistically, there are two teams that are right deep into the high up in the standings that want to make a deep playoff run, that
Vegas?
have the cap space to make the move.
I was going to make this same point, and I'm pretty sure you were about to say who exactly I was going to say.
It's the Rangers and the Predators.
I was going to say the Rangers. They currently have over $7 million this season, and I think next season is like up to 35 or something crazy.
So when you look at that, but even then, like if you open it up to other teams, like maybe a Minnesota Wild or a Vegas, who needs to make a trade to get to get their fully healthy lineup on there. Maybe even like a St. Louis or something like that. They have to move cap out to get there. And are you
Miller for Tarasenko? Do it.
Like it doesn't, like when I look at it, like the ability, there will be more teams involved in a JT Miller sweepstakes at the draft, and that's when you should fully explore. Like, you don't close the door and you say, well, he's untouchable. No, you're always willing, you're always listening. So if the Rangers say, okay, we'll give you Braden Schneider, we'll give you a first, we'll give you another first and a pick, a second round pick, you're like, okay, sure. Why not? Let's go.
You're fucking wishing. Oh my God.
That was my point, Devin. That was my point. I'm not saying that's realistic at all. But what I'm saying is you don't close the door, but the time to make the move is in the offseason when there are more teams willing and able to get into those sweepstakes.
And you can be a bit more creative with your trades.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
when we're done with the Miller conversation, I want to bring up one thing that Sean brought up earlier before I completely forget about it.
Okay. Well, bring it up now because I want to transition to one other player that
okay.
we need to have a conversation about.
So Sean brought up earlier about Beau Horvath to a certain degree, maybe being misunderstood by certain fans in Canucks fandom. And honestly, I think where part of that is coming from is maybe it's recency bias, I don't know, but like they've seen Henrik and they've seen Marcus Naslund both be these point producing, like high point producing, top tier offensive players that were also captains. Whereas to me, I don't think that's a true comparison for Beau Horvath's captaincy. I think he's much more similar to a Trevor Linden-like captain in the sense that he's more of a role depth player. Like, yes, he's our second line center. I'm not sure what it is currently under Boudreau because it's so unpredictable. But that being said, I think he's more of one of those depth clutch guys that more so Linden was, as opposed to like this top tier offensive producing forward. Would you guys agree with that take?
He's more Linden than he is Naslund and Sedin for sure.
Yeah, he is a guy that has he does have offensive abilities. he hasn't exactly had a history of awesome line mates. People forget that. Like, his line mates haven't exactly been the state of Canuck all-timers. But when he's on his game, the Canucks are tougher to beat. He is... I compare him in a lot of ways to what Michael Backlund brings to the Flames. It's very similar. When Horvat is on his game, the Canucks are a better team.
Yeah, within that statement, I feel like there's I guess what the naysayers towards Beau Horvath being a captain, it's not negative whatsoever. You need to have those role players, and especially I feel like if you have a role player like Beau Horvath as your captain, that says a lot about your team, and it says a lot about your identity. And I truly believe that that's what they're lacking as of right now. And I'm not saying it's a Beau Horvath issue. It's more of a team identity issue, and they need to rally around Beau Horvath to be that type of team.
I think
you guys are using terms that are driving me absolutely nuts. Beau Horvath is not a role player. He's a top 6. He's a number 2.
Everybody's
center.
a role player. Everybody's a role player. You have to play your role.
When you say role player, to like that is in hockey terms, that is a depth player who is a penalty killer and an energy player.
Let me clarify. When I use that term,
what I said at all. Yeah, no.
I'm not talking to you, Kevin. I'm talking to Devin.
And who?
Okay,
who else brought it up? Who else brought it up?
You guys.
Yeah, you guys. I'm only one person. I'm only one person. A role player, Jamie Benn, a role player. He's not a typical fucking player, man. Like he really isn't, but in a good way. Like you're skewing my words in a negative connotation, and I don't like it. I'm giving him a compliment.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Hold on. No, you're not interrupting. I'm finishing my comment. It is 100% a positive thing.
Yeah,
it really is. Like yeah. It's a positive, positive comment.
I took it out of context, because to me, when you say role player, when I hear that term, I'm thinking depth player. I'm thinking Andrew Ference is the captain of the Edmonton Oilers.
Who did I just say? Jamie Benn. I did not say Andrew.
Devin. I just said, like, I took it out of content. On the context, I understand
Chris,
where you're coming from now.
Great, I'm taking over the steering wheel. Chris, go ahead.
I honestly think like a Beau captaincy is like the perfect counterpoint to like a McDavid captaincy. They gave McDavid the captaincy because not only did they think that he was going to be the next Gretzky, the next Crosby, but they just assumed that, because he's that good, he's probably going to have leadership capabilities as well, and then just throw that mantle on him. Whereas Beau actually was like, maybe not like a perfect captain pick right out of the bat when they drafted him, but he was mentored by the Sedins into that role and was brought into that role to basically be groomed for it. So it was more of like a earning it and being groomed for it versus just it being given to you just based off of how you play.
Can I add to what you're saying there, Chris? Because I think that's a great point. I think you win cups. You have a better chance of winning Stanley Cups with Beau Horvat captains than Connor McDavid captains. I really believe that. Because Beau Horvat is, I'm not saying Beau Horvat is one of those guys that is McDavid more talented and better? Like overall, would you put McDavid ahead of Horvat as a player? Of course you would. No one here is not going to say that. But Horvat does so many things that wins you Stanley Cups. Like that is the type of player that he is. He is, for a lack of a better way to say it, he is a guy that can win a Selke trophy where McDavid will go for the Art Ross. And we've already proven scientifically that winning the Selke trophy as a forward leads you to winning the Stanley Cup. So you don't like what we have to say, blame science, because we're right.
I'm not sure science would be, I would say statistics, not science.
I think what you're looking for is Scientology.
No, we're not looking for Scientology.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so one more question on all of this in terms of players that fit, don't fit. What do we do with? And I'm going to put this name out there. What do you do with Conor Garland? Is he part of the core? Is he a guy you trade?
He's in the same boat as JT Miller. You're willing to listen to offers, but you're not going to be saying that he's on the block. He is someone who bringing it back to an earlier part in this discussion and debate at time, is that he is someone who can drag you into the fight.
If you are to give up a JT Miller type player, Garland could be one of those guys who kind of steps into that role in his absence. Especially with how feisty he can be.
And for me, I think it is someone who I think was getting some when Jim Rutherford made the comment about them being out of the playoffs and being a cap team, and that's not a good thing, everyone kind of gravitated towards making moves with big players because they were like, well, who else are you going to trade type of outlook when it's like Rutherford Dollywall had a good conversation with Rutherford, and he shared it on Twitter today. Rutherford's he's looking to open up cap space, but that doesn't mean Miller. That doesn't mean Garland. That's probably meaning someone more like a Jason Dickinson, someone more like a Tucker Poolman. And yes, both of those players are brand new in this organization, but they were previous regimes that brought in. Luke Shen has been better than Poolman this season. Dickinson hasn't quite fit in the way they thought, but he's still valuable. And yes, Tucker Poolman's contract is long, but it's only $2.5 million. If you're a top team and you can't handle having a 4-5 defenseman that's making $2.5 million, you have other bigger issues.
Which is part of the issue with the current Canucks, because we ran into cap hell, and that's why Poolman's contract became problematic, not because it was overvalued.
So I look at all that and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you're listening. You're listening to every offer. If you're Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford, but realistically, it's going to take one hell of a deal to get Conor Garland out of Vancouver.
Might not be a king's ransom like Miller would get you, but it definitely would be a decently steep asking price.
I think that there's
Was that on purpose?
I don't think so.
We
lost them.
For those who are only listening to us, Devin was mid-sentence as his feed just disappeared from our conversation. So we don't know if he's coming back or not.
I think if people look at Garland's offensive output, I mean, he only has one goal in 2022. He only has one goal in the last 3, 6, 9, 12 games, 2 goals since December 10th. I think it's been an adjustment of where to try to play him. I think that's been part of the issue with Garland. I don't know if they've quite found his line mates yet. He's not a guy that I would trade I agree with you. He's not a guy that you would trade very easily, but he is a guy, and I think there would be a lot of teams that would want him, but he's not a guy that I would trade very easily. And it's a guy that I would think that wouldn't say again, I agree with basically everything you say. He's not untouchable, but he's not a guy I want to trade.
Devin, would you like to finish your thought?
I have so many tabs open. People probably, if they saw my screen, they'd first of all be annoyed with how many tabs I have open, and it doesn't make a lot of room for me clicking over to other tabs. My point, though, was that there are two types of trades that we just talked about earlier in this podcast. About you have a trade deadline trade and you have a draft trade, if you will. So in trade deadline trade, Sean, I 1000% agree with you. It's a Jason Dickinson type of trade. It's a Tucker Poolman type of trade. A Conor Garland trade would be perfect for a draft. He is a right shot, right winger at a shade under $5 million. And that has team control for the next 4 years after this year. That is absolutely insane. That kid, a guy who could be in your top 6. That's unbelievable. I think that what Miller brings is completely different than what Conor Garland brings. And I think that you would get it would be a queen's ransom or whatever, just a shade under
one step
a
down.
king's ransom. Yeah. To get a Conor Garland off your books and getting something else, because those type of players do not grow on trees. And that is the best time to get the most value out of that player. Period.
Yeah.
So it's like Kevin's brought this up multiple times. Calgary missed the mark on not getting a Conor Garland, especially when that was their need. And who knows what type of conversations there were there. I mean, the Flames GM Brad Treliving has a track record of not being able to close out deals, and that could have been one of them. And it'd be disappointing to hear down the road if that actually was a part of it, but obviously depending on what goes back. But my original point was just wait till the draft until you trade Conor Garland.
The most appetizing thing I would see from trading a Conor Garland away would be not only because you could get a decent ransom for him, but like I honestly feel like Rutherford, Alvin are probably going to try and build out I feel like team toughness is not the correct term, but like if we wanted to have a more harder team to play against just based off of size and overall grit, I feel like getting rid of a smaller guy like Garland to go for a potentially larger guy, a guy that's maybe more physically like a Miller type player, that's like over 200 pounds, can kind of push his weight around, I feel like might work out better for the Canucks in the long term.
No, Chris is using words that piss me off.
What word did I use that pissed you off?
Grit. Conor Garland is gritty.
Okay. Overall, what I meant was
dance gritty, and you don't need the mascot gritty, though, right?
I was going to say he's not orange.
Yeah,
he's already an elf.
I just meant team grit in the sense of like not in the sense of like someone that will go out and fight or someone that will punch someone in the face after a big hit. I'm talking more just the type of guys that are tough to win the puck from in the corners. Not because Garland will skate circles around you, because Garland is excellent at that. But I just mean more so in the sense of like just trying to physically work around a guy just due to his size. Like more of a Crosby type style player where like tree trunks for legs and very defensively sound.
I hear Jay Beagle's available for trade.
Currently injured, not interested.
Jaromir Jagr has trunks.
Maybe 5 years ago, and that's still being nice to Jagr at 5 years ago.
How long ago did he?
That's still probably over 40 for Jagr.
It was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was 2 years before COVID, so 17, 18, 19, right around there.
Like Florida Jagr.
I understand what you're trying to say, Chris, but I don't know. I just I get like what I think what you're trying to say is if they could get a true high speed like power forward in that deal, then maybe. But yeah.
Yes, as far as like that size and what they bring, I just feel like power forward is almost kind of like Goon, kind of being phased out of the game to a certain degree, not to the same degree as an Enforcer or a Goon, but the Todd Bertuzzi's of the world don't really exist anymore the same way they did in like the early 2000s, I feel. Or even a Jerome McGinley for that matter. Like that big bruising forward, I feel like is more rare now than it was. You tend to get your more finesse guys now as opposed to the overall package.
Tanner says Tanner Janot is someone who's bringing that back. And let alone Janot.
Gene Guy. Hello?
Don't you know? But that's what you're trying to get at there, Chris, is if they can find a way to get a bigger player who's a little bit tough but has the speed, because they've got big wingers. They've got the Tanner Pearsons. They've got
But I feel like Tanner Pearson is kind of past his prime as a Canuck. If you can basically bring in the next Tanner Pearson that maybe has a slightly more offensive upside than a Tanner Pearson. Absolutely.
It's just more. It's speed and size is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Garland has speed. He's got skill. He's got grit, but he doesn't have the size. Even though he's still like in our intro, Chris. You talk about him being pissing people off. That alone is good enough. Like that's why it would be like it won't be. I don't think it would be as big a return for than a Miller trade would get, but it would be damn close.
Yeah.
I heard a podcast, so I just want to put the bridge on what we're saying here, because I heard a podcast. I'm not going to name the podcast. Suggest that someone on there suggested that Miller could get an Eichel price for a trade. So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say, if you agree with that, is that Conor Garland could get something lower than a Miller Eichel in that level?
Yeah. He's a 20-goal scorer with grit who's signed long-term. At a decent
that contract alone is drool-worthy.
So, like, you look at when we talk about Eichel price, that is a NHL player, an NHL roster player who's probably going to be in your top 9. How good that roster player is up for debate, whether or not that whatever the trade is, whether it's for Miller or Garland or whatever, a top prospect, a first-round pick, and then Eichel got a second-round pick as well, and then there was a third that goes back to Vegas. There's conditions on it based off of where Vegas ends up and where that draft pick ends up in this draft. But I think that's fair. You look at it being you take a step back, that roster player is probably more in that sort of bottom half of your top 9. That prospect's not necessarily going to be a true blue chip prospect, probably 1A type prospect,
like a Höglander level.
You're still going to be getting a first round pick.
That seems like, oh man.
If I'm the Canucks, I do it. I'm like, okay, so how can we sign a paper? What do we do? Get this?
Like what I'm saying is you're probably getting a somewhat, like, if I'm going to say just take a name off, like say the Canucks roster, you're probably looking at like a Jason Dickinson type player, someone who hasn't quite fit in with that team or is lower down in the lineup than you would likely want with a contract. You're looking at probably a 1A to 1B/2 level prospect and the first round pick. It's not the same as a Peyton Krebs and Alex Tuck in a first. But for Conor Garland, you're talking about a player. We're talking about a league that like Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow got first-round picks at the deadline because they had long-term contracts, and they're third line players. At least that's what Tampa bought.
But yes,
but
that's a first-round pick, though. That's just a first round.
First round. So then you're talking about adding. Then you're talking about someone like Conor Garland, who is a legit top 6 forward, who can score 20 goals, who can drag you into the fight and all that in the top 6. So you're going to add on to that. And maybe it is just potentially a first round pick and a prospect, but that's still pretty damn good. The Canucks essentially paid a first round pick for Conor Garland anyways.
I see that as a tier below what the kind of conversation is going, because we were talking about Jack. We're talking about Jack.
It's going to be close, but it's not going to be quite there.
I think I'm more. I think I'm more where I'm a little bit. What I disagree with is in terms of where you put Miller in the trade. I do see what you're saying about Garland, but I don't see Miller in an Eichel price range. I see Miller below an Eichel price range. I see Garland below a Miller price range.
And I can understand that, but I disagree with it because you're talking about a point per game player who, as we've talked about all the intangibles he brings, and he's signed for not only if you're going to make that if the Rangers are going to make that trade this year, they're going to have to give up a K'Andre Miller or a Braden Schneider or a Niels Lundqvist, along with a roster player, potentially a roster player, and a first round pick.
And that's for Miller, right?
That's for JT about
Miller.
That's for JT Miller.
Because they have a hard on to get JT back in the big city.
If you're looking at doing that for a Conor Garland, you're still looking at probably a prospect that's higher up in your pecking order, if not your best prospect, depending on how good your prospect pool is, and a first round pick, and then whatever else is needed to make the deal work.
A sweetener?
Well, it's not necessarily a sweetener. It's just like make it work cap wise.
That was likely a shout out for Tyler than Axel trying to contribute to the point.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
I would have a feeling that there would be more to that trade if that was going to be it. And it wouldn't be, it would be a prospect going the other way or a pick going the other way. It wouldn't be straight up a Garland, a first and a prospect. I think that there'd be another piece going the other way or a Miller. I agree with the Miller, your Miller take, but for Garland, I think that there'd be another part that would have to be a sweetener on the other side from the Canucks to New York or wherever he's going.
I think it all depends on who that prospect is.
Well, okay, we're talking about a B level, A plus, A minus prospect. Like, what type of prospect are you talking about?
I think you're looking at A minus, B plus and a first for Conor Garland at this point with that contract.
To me, not Rathbone, not Lockwood, anyone else. I might be willing to hear that argument.
No. What I'm saying is, for me, maybe I misunderstood what Devin's question was. What I'm saying is, if we're talking about, you are moving Conor Garland. You're only moving him for the exact perfect trade, right? So
how many perfect trades are there though?
But what I'm saying is, like, you're not. So the prospect that's coming back is going to have to be a B plus, A minus prospect, and that could be the best prospect in that team's prospect pool, depending on how strong their prospect pool is. But and then a first, and then whatever else needs to make it happen.
He was talking about like a sweetener from the Canucks side of things. So that's where
I don't think you need a sweetener.
Was that where you're coming
back? But like that's exactly what I was saying, Chris. Yeah, it all depends on what it actually is. It's realistically, it's all semantics at this point.
We're all pulling hypotheticals out of the clouds.
Totally. But in my mind, if it's going to be Garland, they're going to be asking for Vancouver's going to be asking for a lot, like you are, Sean. Yes, but I believe that New York or whoever will be asking for another piece coming back the other way, not just Garland, depending on how big the prospect is, because it will be a first. It could be a first. and not will be. It could be a first going back to.
It will be a first. They won't trade him for anything less.
It could be a first.
It will be a first. They will not trade
just
him
let me
for
fucking
anything
finish
less.
for once. Good God. Oh my God. I got to get going here too, which sucks. But yeah.
Finish your point. Then. Finish
No,
your point.
it's done. It's done. Sean finished it for me, as always.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's tough because I see where both of you are coming from. I think that maybe the conclusion that we have here is that when we make trades, we like a lot of this is a lot of speculation, but teams are also, as much as we want to oversell our players, we look at situations where fans of other teams look at at other players and they don't see the same value. And that's the problem with the debate is sometimes we overvalue our players and sometimes other teams in terms of a fan base undervalue our players. So,
and Canucks fandom is not guilty of that at all.
Nope. Anyway, well, don't go, Devin, or do you have to go? You don't have to go.
I do. Yeah, I got to go. I got as much as I love this podcast and I love shitting on Sean and his bullshit. I gotta do about more important things that are more progressive within my life.
This is not. I'm hurt. Anyway, we will talk to you Wednesday, though.
Yes. It's going to be a great podcast. Way better than this one. But I'm just kidding.
Because I won't be there. I'm taking offense by that, Devin.
No, I'm just pissy because Sean.
Today Wednesday is that I won't be here.
I'm just pissy that Sean didn't let me make my point before he jumped down my throat. That's it. That's all.
You'll get your retribution on Wednesday.
Well, we'll see. But hey, boys, lovely talking to you as always. Honestly, and Dylan. Go fuck yourself.
He even said nice. Dylan said nice things about Devin, and that was undeserved. Anyway, well, let's leave the Canucks talk there because there is a bunch of other stuff that we should try to get into here. We are now 5 minutes away from the start of the Canada-US game as well. But Sean, let's do the Pig and Duke thing, and we'll get to the other hockey here.
All right, so. Yeah, we have partnered with the Pig and Duke pubs here in Calgary and are part of their Pig and Puck Club. They have 2 locations. You can go and join the Pig and Puck Club. The downtown location is at 503 4th Ave Southwest, and the neighborhood pub is at 1312 12th Ave Southwest. Members of the Pig and Puck Club can get game day specials when they go to watch Canucks and Flames games at either location. Members are also able to enter draw for tickets to the April 23rd game at the Saddledome between the Flames and Canucks. The Shifts and Puffs podcast has 2 tickets to give away as part of the Pig and Puck Club, and you can enter our draw for them by retweeting any of our episodes or pod clips on Twitter or DMing us the word of the week on Twitter or Facebook. Any retweet will gain 1 entry, and any DM with the word of the week will gain you 3 entries. This week's word of the week is gold. Gold for Max Perrot's gold medal performance in the men's snowboarding slopestyle at the Olympics. And we just want to give a shout out to Joe and Steven and everyone at the Pig and Duke for supporting the podcast.
There we go. Okay. That is that. So check that out. So the women's probably this might be one of the better. I think it's certainly the most intriguing. The Canadian women, the U.S. women have understandably, and I don't say this in a way of demeaning the other teams in this tournament. It is that Canada and U.S. have had a far stronger program than everybody else. But they've dominated the tournament in terms of where they're at. And the 2 best teams are facing each other tonight. And just before we dig into the Canada and US, I think for me, we're in a midst of the women's hockey tournament is probably where the World Junior tournament was for a while. There was an upper echelon of teams that were well ahead of everybody else, and then there are teams that are growing. And that's where we are in women's hockey. There are teams that are growing and they're trying, and they aren't. But I mean, I thought the Russian Olympic team, I thought that they battled Canada for the most part of that game. It's when one team is so good and the other team is not, it's tough. And when you have when you got the Natalie Spooner, Sarah Nurse, and Marie-Philippe Poulin, and you're missing players and you're shorthanded, it's going to be it's tough for teams to compete with that. So that being said, I think tonight is going to be this is going to be one of those first games I think that both teams have been, I think have prepared for, and this is what all of their work has been towards.
I just wanted to throw out some props, though. The fact that the Canada team wore their N95 masks all 3 periods, whereas the Russian team only did it for 2 periods and then ditched them for the third, and they still whooped the Russians. So props to Canada.
It's impressive that they actually practiced in those masks and did good workouts, and I think that's well done to Troy Ryan and the coaching staff to have that sort of foresight. That I think that's brilliant, because I'll tell you, as a play-by-play announcer, having required to wear a mask for all games and doing for one tournament for 12 consecutive hours of games, not an easy thing to be. And I mean, anyone that's done a shift with masks knows what I'm talking about. But when you're doing physical activity at a high intensity level, it's hard with a mask.
And extra props to you, Kev, because you're doing it with glasses as well.
It's weird though, because I don't feel my glasses this is a complete sidetrack here, but my glasses don't fog up during the game. Like, that's never happened.
Interesting, because that's one of the chief complaints of eyeglass wearers with the masks.
It's because the ice rink is cold, so it doesn't really, like, I don't know. I don't really, yeah. I'm assuming that, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I just play one on TV.
Yeah, it was great. We got the U.S. is a little shorthanded. They do not have one of their best players in Brianna Decker, who is injured and out for the rest of the tournament, unfortunately, because we want to see them bat best on best. But
was it a sprain or a broken foot? I saw her in a cast or a boot. I just wasn't sure how severe it was.
I'm not too sure, but either way, she's out for the tournament, and that's the big. That's a huge loss for them. But the other, Kev, you talked about Marie-Philippe Poulin, Sarah Nurse, and Natalie Spooner, but don't forget about the up and comer, the one who's like really who stepped up big time so far this tournament for Canada, and Sarah Fillion.
Yeah,
Fillion. And like, is she the next big one? Like, is she going to be the one that steps up and can lead this team to gold? To be fantastic. And as good as this game is going to it is, but you also have they're most likely going to meet in the gold medal match, and that's going to be the game of the hockey game of the Olympics if and when that happens.
To answer your question, though, both Merrick and Haley Sullivan on the Merrick show earlier today basically said yes to your question, though. They do see her as the next Philippe Poulin as far as for women's Canada roster.
She's electric, though. She really is. Like, it's she has a presence in front of the net. She's got a lot of electricity to her game. She's going to be something like I would pay money to watch her. I mean, I kind of do when I pay internet fees, but I would pay actual ticket money to watch her live at a game. Like, it would be that.
I just wish there was more opportunities for that to happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's trending in the right direction. Let's just hope that future for women's hockey keeps on shining brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said this before, and this is just to touch on the whole. This is all I want to say about the Toronto Star column that said that women's hockey shouldn't be in the Olympics. This is what I'm going to say, and I said this on Twitter, and I want to reiterate this. It's very easy for us to retweet that shit and get all angry about someone's comments about it, and then when someone makes a crack about women's Olympics or women's hockey, it's really easy to come down on these. But at the same time, I think it's incumbent about us as podcasts, as the podcast community and the hockey content creator community, to talk more about women's hockey. Not just when someone is feeding and creating outrage, but when it actually, and not just when it's Olympics, but more often than that. Because I think, I feel like it just gets onto a trendy little train, and there's not enough actual, we're guilty to not bring it up as much as we're not making an offensive comment. We may not be making offensive comments about women's hockey, but when we don't talk about it, it's not serving women's hockey either.
But can I just say something here? It's also on the sport to make us want to watch it. There's only so much time in the day to be able to commit to this, and that's the problem. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing for women's hockey. I love watching women's hockey. Or can I just say I love watching hockey, period, regardless of who is playing. I enjoy watching hockey, period.
Regardless of age or gender.
Age, gender, I don't care. I just love watching hockey. But there's only so much time in the day. We just spent an hour talking about the Canucks because that's what we're passionate about. And I love talking about, and I've got it on my second screen here watching the game. But it's so hard in today when you've got NHL and NFL and NBA and Major League Baseball and Olympics. Just Olympics alone is hard enough to try and to stay on top of everything as it is. Right now, one of my biggest issues with the women's hockey and the situation they're in, the best players in the world do not play in the league that is trying to do, it's split right now, yeah. Right? So you've got, and so it's so tough, right? I want to support it. I want to give as much time as I personally can to watch it. But when you don't have the best players in the world playing in the one league in the world that is true professional league in the world that is providing that opportunity, that's a miss. And they need to figure this out because as they're trying to get, they do deserve better, but they also need to find a way to make us want to watch it and want to talk about it more than we are right now. And the other thing is, I look at women's hockey right now as I look at basically 99% of Olympic sports. We really care about it every 4 years. And then, you got your world championships where maybe about 50% of the same people pay attention to it. Whether it is skiing, whether it is snowboarding. We just watched Max. When was the last time someone paid attention and watched Max Perrott or Mark McMorris? Or let alone you've got Kim Boughton in the short track speed skating. You've got the Canadian
Kingsbury with moguls.
Team. Yeah, Kingsbury with moguls, or the Dufour-Lapointe sisters in moguls. When was the last time we really cared and paid attention to them too? They're unfortunately in the same spot as them. I do want to see them. I do want to see the game grow, and that includes growing the women's side for sure. But they also need to find a way outside of Olympics to make it like more must watch, and that they have to work at it. the broadcasters have to work at it with them to make it happen, and they are making inroads, but there's still a lot of work to do, and it's not just on us as podcasters and content creators to continue to push it. They need to find ways to break into this as well.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think to me, what concerns me is when the only time the conversation happens is when someone writes a stupid article about it. Then everybody jumps in and says, "Yeah, I love women's hockey! Yay, yay! How dare you say that thing?" And then it's radio silence for how long? And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that doesn't prove any point. But that's what I'm trying to say is we need to,
get back to the point of the original article, though, and I want to kind of have a counterpoint to that, though, because from what I understood, and I'll admit I didn't read it, but from how it was described to me and seeing the headline and all that, what I understood was basically they're saying that there's a significant drop-off after Canada-US for women's hockey, and then that basically doesn't make it as competitive as an Olympic sport. The counter argument I would have to that, if that is indeed accurate, would you agree that that's kind of accurate as far as what they're trying to say?
That has been her consistent message. That's not the first time she's written that article. She's been writing this article for years about the women's hockey in general. The author of that, so that's a consistent.
Okay, but my understanding of that take was accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, so my counterpoint to that, though, is it's for the most part the same on the men's side. It's just instead of 2 teams, it's 5. There's 5 strong hockey countries for men's, and then after that, it drops off just as steeply as well. When was the last time Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Denmark, like fill in the blank with any, generally speaking, Central European team, when have they ever had any success on the men's side? It's only Canada, US, Russia, Sweden, and Finland.
And if her idea had any merit, then men's basketball wouldn't be a part of the Olympics either.
Yeah, because there's only 2 or 4 countries that are really good at that.
Yeah, so basically, if you're trying to disqualify women's hockey based off of that argument, that's a very weak argument in my mind.
Yeah.
The states have not won gold at the Olympics 3 times in men's basketball. So yeah, that's why the Olympics aren't necessarily just about full on competitiveness. It's like help growing the game too, and having it out there, and that's what's missing with that, with all that. So
yeah,
and it's great. Like, look, yeah, just you need it, and it deserves to be there.
Totally. Flat out. I think we all agree with that. But there's, I mean,
just lack of competition is not a strong enough argument to disqualify it from the Olympics.
Yeah, and it's more of encouragement to grow the game. I mean, how many countries overall are good at figure skating? There's
only a handful. Just like you could basically cherry pick this argument with, you could pick any discipline, any sport, and there's going to be a couple elite countries, and then there's going to be a lot of other countries that are trying to get to that eliteness.
Yeah. It's hard to be elite. It really is, and a lot of these countries are behind the 8 ball because they're so far behind the development of Canada and US, and it's going to take work to get them to a level. But you learn best by playing. So that's just the bottom line with that. I didn't want to give that article that credence, but anyway, we did. Okay. So I guess in terms of some of the other stuff we want to get into, and we're getting into some time here. Okay, so sorry, I'm strangling here, bouncing around here a little bit. Let's touch on the Blackhawks here, and Rock. We haven't been. We were just off the air. I think literally, Rocky Wirtz outburst happened as soon as I hit end broadcast. I think that happened simultaneously. That's why we weren't able to touch on it on Wednesday. But the Blackhawks continue to Black Hawk. I just with the outburst and then the apology and then the relief of the athletic trainer and tweeting out for some unknown reason that they're interviewing Peter Chiarelli for the general manager position.
And then the dismissal by Bettman at his presser.
Yeah, that too. So, I mean, first, in terms of Rocky Wirtz, I think anyone expecting Bettman to do anything that was dreaming. Bettman doesn't have the power to do anything, and I don't think I hated his comments. I thought that they lacked the empathy again. And I think I'll reiterate what I firmly believe on this in terms of all of this. We need a new direction from the NHL commissionership. That I think is the bottom line. It is time for me. I reiterate this. I think it's time for Bettman it's time for us to have a new direction. Because I didn't expect him to do anything about Rocky Wirtz. And I expected Bettman didn't surprise me with his Rocky Wirtz comment at all. And that's telling him where I think we are with Bettman.
Yes, you're right in the sense that there's not a whole lot that Bettman can do, just considering how strong the Wirtz family is on the executive board of the Board of Governors. Like, they've been a powerhouse mainstay in that group for decades, even prior to Rocky with his own father. And then obviously if it stays within the family, it's going to stay with Danny moving forward as well. So like the Wirtz family is one of the most influential families in hockey. So to be able to do anything of significance to them is going to be damn hard to pull off. That being said, though, how weak Bettman looked as far as his comments to kick off the All-Star weekend, I thought was disappointing. And I kind of agree with your disgust there, Kev, in that regard.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. The comments from Rocky Wirtz, like he was almost angry at the potentiality of those questions coming up, even though they were very valid questions, and they weren't actually going backwards. They were actually asking, what are they doing going forwards, and how can fans and season ticket holders have the confidence in the organization that they're going to handle this properly going forwards. But yeah, and then it's honestly it is time for Bettman to move on and just have a whole and you have to have a whole new voice. You can't just be Daly either.
Yeah,
it has to be a whole new voice, someone who isn't so just afraid of saying the wrong thing to get sued. That's literally what Bettman is right now. He doesn't want to say anything that could get him in trouble monetarily, and that's unfortunately that's just not good enough.
Talking about Wirtz directly, though, like he just came across like an entitled guy that basically felt like, because I paid a $2 million fine and because we let go of anyone who was basically on staff back then with the Kyle Beach incident, I don't have to answer any more of your questions moving forward. And it just came across very whiny and very entitled. And I think that's kind of what left a bad taste in everyone's mouth as far as how Wirtz conducted himself. Because I want to more so direct our comments about how Wirtz conducted himself, not necessarily make this about Bettman, because we kind of already touched on how we feel about Bettman in the past.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do agree with you. And I think one area I do see where I saw what Rocky Wirtz was trying to do is I could see like the new staff. It's not, I think he's trying to get the heat off of them. and I understood that. He just went about it just the wrong way. And especially when his son was about to open up and just to shut him down, that just was absolutely
to me, that's probably the most unforgivable part of what Rocky did, was the fact that his son Danny was about to answer the question earnestly, and he basically just shut him down. He's like, no, don't even give it the time of day. We're not going to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
And it was basically just completely taking any power or, I guess, respect of position from Danny away from him.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of that is because Wirtz knows that he can do it, because the Bettman has no power over him. Right. So that's part of it, I guess. The comments were disgusting. I mean, can you imagine if that was a fan that asked that question and not a reporter?
Also, how do you think Kyle Beach feels about those comments?
Yeah, I have not heard a public, I have not heard a verbal "I'm sorry, Kyle Beach" from anybody, from the Blackhawks or Bettman yet. I unless I've missed it, I haven't heard it, and I think that's disgusting to me. Anyway, can we move on, or do we need to dig into this more?
No, I think that's about all I wanted to talk about in that regard.
So I guess a few other things. Jack Eichel's I put in the agenda non-contract. Jack Eichel's in full contact jersey here. So I guess we're close to having the debut of Jack Eichel sooner rather than later. I mean, he's not playing against the Flames this week, but I would think that that's coming sooner rather than later. Which I think is great. I'm looking forward for for the sake of Jack Eichel, to get him on the ice. I mean, it's been 18, 19 months. I want to see what he's able to do. I'm sure he wants to be able to see what he can do. And I hope he has a healthy, successful time. I'm not cheering for them to win, the Vegas to win necessarily, but I hope Eichel does well.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of wishing Eichel well as far as being able to come back from that surgery, and that he can basically still be the same player he was prior.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anything that's a quick hit. A couple of other things that did come out of the Bettman press conference, of course, we have the Winter Classic that will be at Fenway Park. No date, no opponent. But the possibility is out there of the World Cup of Hockey in 2026. Realistic, hopeful, possible. Where are we at?
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, they've been so inconsistent with the World Cup of Hockey, and trying to find something on an international schedule that's not just a one-off. Like Sean says, I'll believe it when I see it, because they haven't shown any consistency in the past.
Yeah.
I'd love to get into it, but it's just until it happens and they actually have a standardized format, instead of just changing it up at their whim, because guess what? It's a moneymaker. We have to make money. No, fuck off with this. Let's create a proper World Cup that is comparable to what the soccer one is, that we're all fucking behind, with Team Canada needing one more win to get in there for the first time since 1986.
Yeah.
Let's create that. Create it so that it's not just it just doesn't come across as an absolute cash grab.
Players want a best on best tournament, and if they aren't going to the Olympics, they want something that's equivalent, and that if the NHL and the IIHF can actually deliver, that's what the World Cup of Hockey should be.
Yeah. Agree. And then Conor Bergard, ladies and gentlemen. Conor Bergard, I know that we're watching Trevor Zegras, and he's doing all these wonderful things, and he's magical, and but this Conor Bedard kid, I keep telling you guys about Conor Bedard. I've tried to enlighten you. I try to give you wisdom. And sometimes people go, no, whatever. Yeah, whatever, Kevin, whatever. And then Conor Bergard does what he did. If you haven't seen the goal in Calgary, all I'm going to say is when restrictions are done and you have the opportunity to buy tickets to junior hockey, but next year I really hope that Conor Bergard has the opportunity to play the entire Western Hockey League because he's a must watch. He's like we just saw a touch of what he could do at the World Juniors, unfortunately, and I think it's great for the next draft picks that Bedard won't be a part of, but that the prospects game is going to happen on March 23rd. I think that's awesome. But this is a guy you probably next year is going to be you're going to want to watch him because you're probably going to have to pay 10 times as much to watch him in the 2 years after that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anything that we didn't touch on? We're also agreeable now after we were so disagreeable.
I think there's also a motivation to want to watch the women's game right now, too.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through Sorry, I didn't realize we would... Okay, fine.
That we're also, 5 minutes away from another 2-hour podcast.
Dylan has a question about the All-Star. Can we just quickly touch that? I didn't really... sorry, and I didn't see your chats, but we'll talk about all that. We'll talk about the All-Star game on Wednesday. How about that? We'll leave it all here. Was going through a bunch of anyway. We'll leave it here. We might have a guest on Wednesday. Just are fine doing final confirmations. We'll announce it on Twitter if we have it. And how do we follow everyone?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
Devin Gordhow09. Tyler, who I hope you're okay. He's doing fine. He had a
upper body injury.
He has an upper body injury. That's what we'll say. TNOBLE. He will be back. He promises. IMKEVOLE. Shifts and Pucks. Facebook.com, YouTube.com, Twitch.com. We're back on Wednesday for Flames Talk. We're going to, I'll just tease it, is Johnny Gaudreau in the Hart conversation. We'll leave it there, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.